The night he canceled his $1 million anniversary gala, he walked out, not with his wife, but with her maid. I still remember the sound of crystal hitting marble, the way silence swallowed the entire ballroom when Cashin Varelli appeared at the top of that grand staircase, his hand wrapped around mine like I was someone who mattered, like I wasn't just the help. But let me take you back, because this story didn't start with champagne and cameras. It started with tea, Earl Grey, to be exact, spilled across imported Italian tile, while a woman who wore diamonds like armor told me I was nothing. "You clumsy, worthless," Celeste's voice cut through the morning air like broken glass. Her blue eyes, the ones magazines called Sapphire, looked at me like I was dirt she'd tracked in on expensive shoes. "Do you have any idea how much that vase cost?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. My hands were shaking as I knelt to pick up the shattered porcelain, each piece a reminder that in this world, I didn't belong. Hi viewers. Kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. The Varelli mansion sat above Bellwater like a throne made of white stone and old money. 20 rooms. Marble floors shipped from Carrara. Windows that caught sunlight and turned it into gold. I'd been cleaning those windows for 3 months, and every single day, Celeste found new ways to remind me I was temporary, replaceable, invisible. "Are you even listening to me?" She stepped closer, her silk robe whispering against the floor. "I asked you a question." "Yes, ma'am." My voice came out steady, even though my heart was racing. The vase was 18th century. French, worth about $12,000. Her face twitched. She hated when I knew things, when I showed I was more than what she decided I should be. "Then you'll work it off," she said, her smile sharp enough to draw blood. "Starting with scrubbing the guest bathrooms. On your hands and knees. The way someone like you should. Someone like me." She never said the words outright. She was too careful for that, too aware of the staff watching from doorways and corners. But I heard what she meant. Saw in the way her nose wrinkled when I passed, and how she'd move her purse when I entered a room, like I might steal it. I'd dealt with people like Celeste before. Women who thought money could buy them permission to be cruel. But this was different, because her husband had been standing in the doorway for the last 2 minutes, watching everything. Cashin Varelli didn't move like other rich men. He didn't announce himself with loud voices or heavy footsteps. He just appeared, quiet as a held breath, his dark eyes taking in everything while his face gave away nothing. "Celeste," he said, and her whole body went rigid. She turned, smile already in place. Sweet, practiced, fake as her eyelashes. "Darling, I was just." I heard 2 words. That's all it took for the temperature in that room to drop 10 degrees. Celeste's laugh sounded like wind chimes in a storm, pretty but wrong. "The help needs discipline, Cashin. You understand." He looked at her for a long moment, then at me, still on my knees with broken porcelain cutting into my palms. Something shifted behind his eyes, something I couldn't name, but fell in my chest like thunder rolling in from the sea. "Clean this up, Naomi," he said quietly. "Then take the rest of the day off." But Celeste started. "Paid," he added, never looking away from his wife. "And the vase was insured. Send me the claim form." The silence that followed was the kind that makes your ears ring. Celeste's face went from porcelain to stone, her jaw so tight I could see the muscle jumping beneath her skin. She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned on her heel and walked away, her designer slippers slapping against marble like small acts of violence. I gathered the broken pieces with shaking hands, aware of Cashin still standing there, watching, waiting. "Thank you, sir," I whispered. He didn't respond, just stood there until I finished, until I'd swept up every last shard and wrapped them in newspaper. When I finally looked up, he was gone. Disappeared like smoke. Like maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. But I hadn't, and that's when I realized something that should have terrified me. Cashin Varelli had just taken my side against his wife. In this house, in this world, that was more dangerous than any broken vase. What Celeste didn't know, what nobody knew except me and the universe, was that I had a secret, one that would change everything, one that made her cruelty feel small and temporary, like rain that looks like a storm until you realize it's just a cloud passing through. My father had worked for the Varelli family 30 years ago, down at the docks, loading ships, breaking his back so men like Lucy and Varelli could build empires. And before he died, he'd told me something that I'd carried like a stone in my pocket ever since. "They owe us, Naomi," he'd whispered from that hospital bed, his voice rough as sandpaper. Not money, not apologies, just acknowledgement that we mattered, that we helped build what they have. So when I'd seen the job posting 3 months ago, I'd applied. Not for revenge, not even for money, though God knows I needed it, but because I wanted to prove something my father never got the chance to prove, that dignity doesn't come from wealth. It comes from how you carry yourself when nobody's watching, when everybody's judging, when the whole world tells you you're nothing, and you choose to be something anyway. I walked to my room in the staff quarters, a space barely bigger than Celeste's closet, and sat on the edge of my narrow bed. My hands were still trembling, not from fear, from something bigger. Something building in my chest like a wave, gathering strength before it breaks against the shore. 90 days until the next anniversary gala. 90 days until Bellwater's elite would flood this mansion, drinking expensive wine and pretending their money made them better than people like me. 90 days until everything would change in ways I couldn't predict, but somehow knew were coming. I pressed my palm against my grandmother's quilt, the only thing I brought from home, and closed my eyes. The clock was ticking, and my silence was about to speak louder than words. If you've ever been judged before people knew your story, hit like right now. Comment, "I rise in silence," if you've ever been underestimated. Because this isn't just my story, it's ours. 3 years before I ever stepped foot in the Varelli mansion, I was someone Celeste would have crossed the street to avoid. I worked 2 jobs. Mornings a laundromat where the steam made my hair frizz and my clothes smell like other people's detergent, and nights at a diner where the coffee was always burnt and the tips were always small. My grandmother lived with me in a 1-bedroom apartment above a bodega that sold expired milk and dreams that had gone sour. She had dementia. Some days she knew me. Most days she called me by my mother's name and asked when dinner would be ready. I never corrected her. What was the point? In her mind, I was whoever she needed me to be. I learned something in those years that Celeste, with all her money and marble floors, would never understand. Resilience isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It's the quiet decision you make every single morning when you wake up tired and choose to keep going anyway. The hiring event happened on a Tuesday. One of those spring days when the air smells like possibility and salt from the ocean, and you almost believe things might get better. The community center had put up flyers for a job fair. Estate management positions, they called it, which was just a fancy way of saying rich people needed staff. I almost didn't go. The laundromat manager had called in sick, and I was covering a double shift. But my grandmother's medication had gone up again, and the math wasn't mathing anymore. I needed more money or less pride, and I'd run out of pride years ago. The Varelli booth was at the back of the gym, tucked behind the catering companies and landscaping crews. A woman with a clipboard and glasses that kept sliding down her nose was conducting interviews. Behind her stood a man I didn't recognize at first. Dark suit, darker eyes, the kind of posture that comes from growing up knowing you'll never have to worry about next month's rent. Cashin Varelli looked bored. Not mean, just distant, like he was watching everything through glass. He was supposed to be there for appearances, I learned later. The company was launching some initiative about community investment, and having the heir show up made good press. But when I sat down across from that table, something changed. Naomi Ellis, the woman read from my application. 2 years at Sunshine Laundromat, 3 years at Mike's Diner. No formal training in domestic service. She looked up, her expression already apologetic. "We're really looking for candidates with estate experience." "I understand," I said, standing. "I'd expected this. Thank you for your time." "Wait." Cashin's voice stopped me halfway to standing. It was the first word I'd heard him speak, and it carried weight. Not volume, just certainty. "Sit down." The woman blinked. "Mr. Varelli, the requirements." "I'll handle this." He leaned forward, elbows on the table, and looked at me like he was actually seeing me. Not past me, not through me, at me. "Why do you want this job?" Honest answer, Because my grandmother's pills cost more than my rent, and the diner was cutting hours. Because I was tired of smelling like grease and disappointment. Because I wanted to prove my father right, that the Varellis weren't gods, just people who'd gotten lucky while people like us broke our backs building their luck. But I couldn't say any of that. I don't need perfection, I said instead, echoing words I'd heard him say earlier to another candidate. I need honesty. His eyebrows went up. Almost smiled. Almost. That's my line. I know. I met his eyes, even though every instinct told me to look away. But it's a good one, so I'm using it. I'm honest. I'm reliable. I show up on time, I work until the job's done, and I don't complain. If that's not what you need, then I appreciate your time. But if it is, I shrugged. Then you'll never need to doubt me, sir. The silence stretched like taffy. The woman with the clipboard shifted uncomfortably. Somewhere in the gym, a microphone squealed feedback. Then Cashin stood, extended his hand. You start Monday. I shook it, his palm warm and calloused in ways I didn't expect. Rich people usually had soft hands. This felt like he knew what work was. Thank you, sir. Cashin, he said. And don't thank me yet. My wife runs the household. If you can't handle her, you won't last a week. It should have been a warning. It was. But I heard something else underneath it. Not a threat, but a test. Maybe even a lifeline he didn't know how to throw any other way. I started the following Monday. Celeste looked at me like I was a stain on her perfect white couch. The other staff, an older woman named Loretta who managed the kitchen, and two younger guys who handled grounds and maintenance, welcomed me with cautious smiles and warnings delivered in whispers. Don't cross Mrs. Varelli, Loretta told me my first day, her voice low as she showed me where the cleaning supplies lived. And don't get comfortable. She goes through staff like tissues. But I wasn't like the others. I had a reason to stay that had nothing to do with a paycheck, good as it was. I had my father's voice in my head telling me we mattered, that we'd helped build this empire from the docks and the warehouses, from the sweat and the silence. I didn't tell anyone about that. Not Loretta, not Cashin, especially not Celeste, who would have used it like a knife. In my first week, I learned the mansion's rhythms. Celeste slept until 10, emerged flawless and cold, and spent her days at charity luncheons and spa appointments. Cashin left before dawn for his office downtown and came home after dark, his tie loosened and his eyes tired. They ate dinner in separate rooms, slept in separate wings, moved through that massive house like ghosts haunting different centuries. I also learned that Cashin watched. Not in a creepy way, just aware. He noticed when I stayed late to fix something Celeste had broken during one of her tantrums. When I gave my lunch to one of the groundskeepers who'd forgotten his. When I quietly cleaned up messes that weren't mine to clean because it was easier than watching someone else get blamed. 60 days until the gala. That's what Loretta mentioned one morning, marking her calendar. Mrs. Varelli goes crazy during gala season, she warned. Last year, she fired 2 people the week before because the napkins weren't folded right. I didn't respond, just nodded and kept polishing the silver that would hold food for people who'd never known hunger. But that night, as I walked past Cashin's study, I heard his voice. Low, frustrated, talking to someone on the phone about shipping contracts and delayed cargo and pressure from the board. I should have kept walking, should have minded my business. Instead, I knocked. The conversation stopped. Come in. I opened the door slowly. He was at his desk, surrounded by papers that looked like they were drowning him. His jacket was off, sleeves rolled up, hair messy from running his hands through it. I'm sorry to interrupt, sir, I said. I just wanted to say, I hope your evening gets better. He stared at me like I'd spoken another language. What? You seem stressed. I hope whatever's troubling you works out. I started to close the door. Naomi. He stopped me again with my name. How do you find the work? Are you settling in? Simple questions that meant nothing. And everything. It's fine, sir. Thank you for asking. Do you miss home? I thought about my grandmother, probably watching game shows in a nursing home I could barely afford even with this job. About the apartment I'd given up. About the life I'd left behind for this one. Yes, I said honestly. But I needed to be here. Something flickered across his face. Curiosity, maybe, or recognition. Why? I almost told him. Almost said, Because your father employed mine, and when my father died, there was no pension, no acknowledgement, no thank you. Because I wanted to see if the people who'd built their fortune on backs like his remembered we existed. But I just smiled. Because the work matters to me, sir. He nodded slowly, like I'd answered a question he hadn't asked. Cashin, please. In this room, at least, you don't have to call me sir. Okay. I felt something shift between us. Small, fragile, dangerous. Cashin. When I closed the door, my heart was racing. Not because of attraction, though he was handsome in that tired, complicated way some men are, but because I realized something that should have scared me more than it did. I didn't just want to prove my father right anymore. I wanted to understand the man who'd hired me when he didn't have to, who defended me when his wife told him not to, who looked at me like maybe, just maybe, I was worth looking at. But what Cashin didn't know, what I'd kept locked away like treasure at the bottom of the ocean, was that his father's will contain more than just business arrangements and stock options. It contained my name. The clock was ticking, and my silence was about to speak louder than words. The accusation came on a Thursday. Bright morning, birds singing, the kind of day that made you believe the world was fair and beautiful if you didn't know any better. I just finished arranging fresh flowers in the main parlor. White orchid Celeste had imported from somewhere I couldn't pronounce when her assistant found me. A young woman named Claire with nervous hands and an apologetic face. Mrs. Varelli wants to see you in the sitting room, she whispered. Now, the way she said it made my stomach drop. I followed her through the halls, past paintings worth more than my life, under chandeliers that caught light and turned it into tiny stars. When we reached the sitting room, Celeste was perched on her favorite chair like a queen on a throne, and in her hand, catching the sunlight, was her diamond bracelet. Except it wasn't. Not really. I could see from the doorway it was paste. Good paste, probably fooled most people, but not real. Come in, Naomi, she said sweetly. Too sweetly. The kind of voice snakes would use if they could talk. We need to discuss something. I stepped inside. Claire disappeared like smoke, probably grateful she wasn't the target. The door clicked shut behind me. Yes, ma'am. Celeste held up the bracelet, letting it dangle from her fingers. This was in my jewelry box this morning. Do you know what it is? Your bracelet, ma'am. Wrong. She smiled. This is a fake. A very good fake, but fake nonetheless. Which means someone switched my $20,000 bracelet for this piece of costume jewelry. Her blue eyes locked onto mine. Care to explain? My mouth went dry. I don't understand, ma'am. Don't you? She stood, moving closer. I could smell her perfume. Expensive, floral, suffocating. You clean my room. You have access to my personal belongings. And now my jewelry is missing. She tilted her head. I should call the police. Have you arrested? But I'm trying to be generous. If you return it now, I'll only fire you. The room felt smaller suddenly. Hotter, like the walls were closing in. I didn't take your bracelet. No. She laughed. Cold. Sharp. Then who did? The ghost of Christmas past? Please, Naomi. You people always think you're so clever, that we won't notice when things disappear. But I notice everything. You people. There it was. The thing she'd been dancing around for months, finally said almost out loud. Not quite enough to sue over. Just enough to sting. I wanted to scream. Wanted to throw her perfect vase through her perfect window. Wanted to grab her by her silk collar and tell her exactly what I thought of her and her diamonds and her casual cruelty. Instead, I said, truth needs no defense. She blinked. What? I didn't take your bracelet, ma'am. I've never stolen anything in my life. And if you want to search my room, call the police or fire me. That's all right. But I won't apologize for something I didn't do. My voice stayed steady, even though my hand was shaking. Truth needs no defense. It just is. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or rage. Hard to tell with women like her, who'd learned to hide everything behind perfect makeup and practice smiles. Get out, she whispered. And if I find proof you took it, you won't. I turned toward the door. Because I didn't. I made it 3 steps before she spoke again. You think you're special, don't you? Because my husband is kind to you. Her voice dripped poison. Let me tell you something about Cashin. He's kind to everyone. It doesn't mean anything. You're just a help. You'll always be just a help. And the sooner you remember that, the easier your life will be. I didn't turn around. Didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing my face. Just kept walking until I reached my room, closed the door, and finally let myself breathe. My whole body was shaking now. Not from fear. From fury. From the unfairness of it. From knowing that women like Celeste could destroy people like me with a word, a lie, a convenient accusation. And there was nothing I could do about it, because the world believed people like her and doubted people like me. I sat on my bed and pressed my palms against my eyes. Don't cry. Don't give her that power. But here's what Celeste didn't know. Her assistant Claire had done this before. Twice. To previous staff members who'd left abruptly with no explanation. Loretta had told me about it weeks ago, whispered over morning coffee about how Claire switched jewelry, planted evidence, created reasons for Celeste to fire people she didn't like. I'd known, and I'd stayed quiet, because some battles you can't win by fighting. Some battles you win by staying in the ring long enough for your opponent to knock themselves out. That evening, I was scrubbing guest bathrooms, on my hands and knees, just like Celeste wanted, when I heard footsteps. Heavy. Male. Cashin's. He appeared in the doorway, still in his work clothes, tie loosened around his neck. He looked at me kneeling on expensive tile with a scrub brush in my hand, and something in his expression cracked. What happened? His voice was quiet, controlled, dangerous. I wrung on my sponge. Nothing, sir. Just doing my job. Cashin. He corrected me automatically. Then softer, Naomi. What happened? I could have told him. Could have explained about the bracelet, the accusation, his wife's cruelty wrapped in silk and diamonds. But what would be the point? He'd choose her. They always chose. The words came out sharper than I meant. I don't need you to save me. I just need to do my job. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded once. Okay. But as he turned to leave, I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Not pity, not guilt, something deeper, like he was starting to see the walls of his perfect prison for the first time. That night, I lay in my narrow bed and thought about my father, about the stories he'd told me of working the docks, of being invisible labor that kept the world turning, about how he'd never complained, never fought back, just worked and hoped his dignity would be enough. It hadn't been enough for him, but maybe it would be enough for me. 60 days until the gala. 60 days until Celeste's perfect world would be on display for everyone to see and envy and photograph. 60 days until something I couldn't name but felt in my bones would change everything. The clock was ticking, and somewhere in this mansion of marble and lies, Cashin Varelli was starting to see his wife for who she really was. He didn't know it yet, but this humiliation would become my rebirth. The shift happened slowly. Like seasons changing, you don't notice until suddenly the air smells different and the light falls at new angles. Cashin started appearing places I didn't expect. The kitchen at midnight when I was preparing Loretta's herb garden inventory. The back terrace where I took my lunch breaks, overlooking the ocean. The library where I sometimes hid between shifts to read books I probably shouldn't touch. He never said much, just existed in the same space. Like he was learning how to breathe air that wasn't suffocating him. "What are you reading?" he asked one evening, finding me curled in the leather chair by the window. I held up the book. Marcus Aurelius. Meditations. His eyebrows rose. Heavy choice. Your father had good taste. I closed it carefully. I'll put it back. Keep it. He poured himself whiskey from the decanter on the side table. Nobody reads these anymore. They're just decoration. That's sad, I said without thinking. Books shouldn't be decoration. They should be doors. He paused mid-pour. Doors to what? To understanding that you're not alone. That other people have felt what you're feeling. That pain and confusion and doubt aren't weaknesses. They're just part of being human. I stood, suddenly aware I'd said too much. I should go. Naomi. He stopped me. Again, always stopping me with my name. Do you think I'm human? The question hung between us like smoke. I could have lied, could have said what he wanted to hear, but we'd gone past that point somehow. I think you're trapped, I said quietly. And I think you're so used to the cage you've forgotten what freedom feels like. His laugh was bitter. You sound like a philosopher. I sound like someone who's been free and lost it. I moved toward the door. Freedom isn't money, Cashin. It's choice. And you've chosen this life. Your cage has golden bars, but it's still a cage. I left before he could respond. But I felt his eyes following me, heavy with questions he didn't know how to ask. After that, he sought me out more deliberately. Asked me about my grandmother, about growing up, about what I wanted from life beyond cleaning mansions and folding rich people's towels. I answered honestly, too honestly, told him about my father's death, about the medical bills that bankrupted us, about working 2 jobs and still coming up short, about the apartment above the bodega where cockroaches were roommates and heat was a luxury. "Why did you really apply here?" he asked one night. We were on the terrace. Him with his whiskey, me with chamomile tea Loretta had pressed into my hands. 30 days until the gala. The air smelled like jasmine and salt. I could have lied. Should have. My father worked for your family. His head snapped up. What? 30 years ago. At the docks. Manuel. He loaded ships until his back gave out and your father decided disabled workers weren't profitable. I kept my voice neutral. Factual. He died 6 months after they let him go. No pension. No health insurance. No thank you for 3 decades of service. The silence was heavy enough to drown in. I didn't know, Cashin said finally. Why would you? Men like my father are invisible. We keep your world running, and when we break, you replace us. I set down my mug. I'm not angry. Not anymore. I just wanted to see if the people who built their fortune on backs like his remembered we existed. I got my answer, which is that you don't. Not really. But that's okay. I smiled and meant it, because I remember. And that's enough. He looked at me like I'd spoken a language he was trying to learn. I am sorry for what happened to your father, for what my family did. I don't want your apology, Cashin. I stood. I want you to see, to understand that every luxury you have, someone like my father built. And when you throw anniversary galas and drink expensive wine and pretend your money makes you better, just remember who made it all possible. I walked away before he could see the tears I wouldn't let fall, before he could offer me things I didn't want, before the fragile thing building between us could become something I couldn't take back. But I felt it. God, I felt it. This pull, this understanding, this dangerous recognition that underneath his tailored suits and inherited wealth, Cashin Varelli was as lonely as me. Maybe lonelier, because at least I knew what mattered. He was still trying to figure it out. The mansion had started feeling different. Smaller, like the walls were listening. The staff noticed the change too, the way Cashin asked my opinion on small things. The way he defended me when Celeste's complaints got too vicious. The way he looked at me sometimes, like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve but desperately wanted to. Loretta pulled me aside one morning. "Be careful," she whispered. "Men like him don't see women like us the way we need to be seen. They see projects, distractions, things to save so they can feel better about themselves." "I know," I said, and I did. But knowing and feeling are different countries, and I was stuck somewhere between them. 20 days until the gala. Celeste's obsession with perfection reached new heights. She'd ordered imported orchids, hired a famous string quartet, and commissioned a dress that cost more than I'd make in 2 years. The guest list included senators, celebrities, and old money families whose names appeared in history books. And then she demanded I be gone before it started. She's an embarrassment. I heard her tell Cashin through his study door. Her presence cheapens everything. I want her out. Permanently. The silence stretched so long I thought maybe he'd agreed. My heart dropped into my stomach. 30,000 feet. No parachute. Then she stays. What did you say? I said she stays. Naomi has done nothing wrong. She's loyal, hardworking, and honest, which is more than I can say for most people in this house. Are you defending the help over your own wife? I'm defending a human being who deserves basic respect, something you've forgotten how to give. The crash of something expensive hitting the wall made me jump, but I couldn't stop smiling, because for the first time since I'd walked into this mansion, someone had chosen me, not because I deserved it, not because it was easy, but because it was right. That night, there was a small box on my pillow. Inside, wrapped in velvet, a silver bracelet. Simple, beautiful, engraved with words that made my chest tight, for loyalty unseen. No note, no name, But I knew. I should have returned it. Should have drawn the line we were both pretending didn't exist. Instead, I wrapped it carefully in tissue paper and hid it beneath my pillow, next to my grandmother's quilt and my father's watch and all the other treasures poor people carry. Silence can be mistaken for weakness. Celeste was about to make that mistake. If you've ever stayed silent because your worth was questioned, stay with me. Like this video, if you believe silence can be power. Because what happened next changed everything. Claire found the bracelet on a Tuesday. Of course she did. The universe has a sixth sense of timing. I was folding laundry in the service room when Loretta appeared, her face pale. Mrs. Varelli wants to see you. Now, in the main parlor. My stomach dropped. I touched my pocket instinctively, but I'd hidden the bracelet that morning. Felt wrong keeping it out where anyone could see. Too dangerous. Too real. The walk to the parlor felt like walking to execution. My heart hammered against my ribs, each step echoing too loud in the marble halls. When I entered, Celeste was holding court like a prosecutor, Claire standing behind her like a ghost with guilty eyes, and the bracelet dangling from Celeste's manicured fingers. Interesting, Celeste said, her voice smooth as poison honey. I found this in Claire's drawer during a routine inspection. Imagine my surprise. My mouth went dry. Mom, she says you gave it to her. Celeste's smile was all teeth. Said you were worried I'd find it in your room. Asked her to hide it for you. She stood, moving closer. I could smell her perfume mixed with triumph. Care to explain how my husband's personal gift, a bracelet he commissioned for our 5th anniversary, ended up in your possession? The lie was so perfect, it almost sounded true. 5th anniversary gift. His personal commission. Evidence of something inappropriate. Something that would destroy me and damage him and give Celeste exactly what she wanted. I looked at Claire. Saw her refusing to meet my eyes. Saw her trembling hands and the way she positioned herself behind Celeste like a shield. And I understood she'd been promised something. Protection. Money. Maybe just the satisfaction of watching me fall. I didn't steal it, I said quietly. No. Celeste held it up to the light. Then how did you get it? I could have told the truth. Could have explained that Cashin gave it to me as thanks for loyalty, for enduring her cruelty, for being human in a house that had forgotten how. But that truth would hurt him more than me. Would give Celeste ammunition in their already dying marriage. Would twist something pure into something ugly. I found it, I lied. In the library. Thought maybe someone dropped it. Liar. Celeste's voice cracked like a whip. You think I'm stupid? You think I don't see what you're doing? Coming into my house with your sad eyes and your humble act. Worming your way into my husband's sympathy. She stepped so close I could see the rage beneath her perfect makeup. Let me tell you something about your kind. You don't belong here. You'll never belong here. And no amount of cleaning toilets or playing victim will change that. You're nothing. Less than nothing. Just another scheming woman who thinks she can take what's mine. You're kind. There was again. Louder this time. Sharper. The thing she'd been circling around for months finally said almost plainly. Heat flooded my face. Shame and fury warring in my chest. I wanted to scream. Wanted to throw her cruelty back in her face with interest. Instead, I lifted my chin and met her eyes dead on. You shame yourself by assuming I would. I've never taken anything that didn't belong to me. I've worked hard every single day I've been here. Treated everyone with respect. Done my job without complaint. And if you want to fire me over a bracelet I didn't steal, that's your choice. But we both know what this is really about. Oh, her eyebrow arched. Enlighten me. It's about the fact that your husband sees me as a person, and you can't stand it. Can't stand that someone you consider beneath you gets treated with more kindness than you've shown anyone in years. Can't stand that maybe, just maybe, respect isn't something you can buy with diamonds and designer dresses. My voice stayed steady, even though my hands were shaking. I'm not your enemy, Mrs. Varelli. Your loneliness is. The slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. Pain exploded across my cheek, sharp and hot. The room tilted. Claire gasped, and Celeste stood there breathing hard, her hands still raised, her face twisted with something uglier than anger. Rage. Pure un filter de rage. Get out, she whispered. Pack your things and get out of my house. You're fired. I touched my burning cheek. Tasted copper, but I didn't cry. Wouldn't give her that satisfaction. Yes, ma'am. I turned toward the door, each step feeling like walking through water. My vision blurred. Not from tears, from shock. From the weight of months of cruelty finally landing like a physical blow. And then I heard his voice. What the hell did you just do? Cashin stood in the doorway, still in his work clothes. Tie perfectly knotted, but his face looked like something had broken inside him and the pieces were cutting their way out. Celeste's expression shifted immediately. Smooth. Practiced. Darling, I saw you hit her. His voice was ice. Controlled fury. The kind that's more dangerous than shouting. I saw everything. She stole from us. Celeste's voice pitched higher. That bracelet you gave me for our anniversary. She had it. She's been stealing. I never gave you that bracelet. Cashin stepped into the room. I gave it to Naomi 3 days ago, as thanks for her loyalty, for enduring your constant cruelty with more grace than you've shown in your entire life. The silence was so complete, I could hear my own heartbeat. Could hear Celeste's sharp intake of breath. Could hear Claire's small whimper as she realized her plan had imploded. You what? Celeste's face went from rage to confusion to something worse. Betrayal. Real or performed, I couldn't tell. You gave her jewelry? Our maid. Her name is Naomi. Cashin looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not pity, not guilt, something rawer. And she's worth 10 of you. How dare you? No, how dare you? His voice finally rose. How dare you treat another human being like garbage? How dare you use your privilege as permission to be cruel? How dare you hit someone who can't fight back? He turned to Celeste, and I watched their marriage die in real time. I've tolerated your selfishness, your materialism, your obsession with appearances, but I will not tolerate abuse. Not in my house. Not ever. Celeste laughed. Hi. Brittle. Breaking. Your house? Everything you have is because of me. My connections, my family name, your father's name, Cashin corrected coldly, which you've traded on your entire life while contributing nothing, while building nothing, while caring about no one but yourself. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling our lawyer. Tonight. This marriage is over. You can't be serious. But her voice wavered. Over the help? Over the fact that I don't recognize you anymore. Maybe I never did. He looked at her like she was a stranger. The anniversary gala is in 3 days. Every invitation sent. Every arrangement made. Every camera ready to document our perfect marriage. His smile was bitter. There won't be a gala. I'm canceling it. Tonight. You can't. Celeste's composure finally cracked. Do you know how much that'll cost? The humiliation? The press. Less than it's cost my soul to pretend we're happy. He turned to me. Naomi, are you all right? I nodded, not trusting my voice. My cheek still burned. My heart still raced. But something inside me felt lighter. Vindicated. Seen. Take the rest of the week off. Paid. And when you come back, he glanced at Celeste. You'll report directly to me. Not her. Cashin, Celeste started. Don't. He held up a hand. Don't say another word. Just don't. He walked to his study without looking back. The door closed with a quiet click that sounded like thunder. Celeste stood there, trembling. Her perfect mask shattered. Her blue eyes wild with something between rage and panic. She looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time I saw past the diamonds and designer clothes to the terrified woman underneath. This is your fault, she whispered. All of this. No, ma'am. I touched my swelling cheek gently. This is yours. You had everything, and you threw it away because you couldn't stand to see someone else treated with kindness. I moved toward the door. I hope one day you figure out that cruelty doesn't make you powerful. It just makes you cruel. I left her standing in that perfect parlor with her lies and her assistant and her crumbling empire. In my room, I finally let myself shake. Let the adrenaline drain out of me like water from cupped hands. Let myself feel the fear I'd held back, the anger I'd swallowed, the relief that someone had finally seen. Finally said the things I couldn't say. Finally stood up when standing up cost something. That night, the entire household buzzed with whispered conversations. Loretta brought me ice for my face and squeezed my hand without speaking. The groundskeeper knocked softly to ask if I needed anything. Even the cook, who usually kept to himself, left homemade soup outside my door. They'd all known, had all watched Celeste's cruelty for years, had all stayed silent because jobs were precious and speaking up was dangerous. But tonight, something had shifted. Tonight, silence had finally spoken. I pressed the ice to my cheek and thought about my father, about how he'd endured decades of being invisible, of being used and discarded, about how he died, believing his work didn't matter to people like the Varellis. But I'd proven something he never got the chance to prove, that dignity doesn't come from what others think of you. It comes from what you know about yourself. And I knew, had always known, that I deserved respect, deserved kindness, deserved to exist without apology. The silver bracelet sat on my dresser, catching moonlight through my small window. I picked it up, traced the engraving with my finger. For loyalty unseen. But loyalty wasn't invisible anymore. It had walked into that parlor wearing my face, had stood its ground when cruelty tried to beat it down, had spoken truth when silence would have been easier. 3 days until the gala, that wouldn't happen. 3 days until Celeste's perfect world collapsed in front of cameras and celebrities and everyone who'd ever envied her life. 3 days until Bellwater learned that beneath the marble and money, the Varelli marriage was as hollow as an echo. And somewhere in this mansion, Cash and Varelli was making phone calls that would change everything. The clock was ticking, and the woman who'd once ruled this house with diamonds and cruelty was about to learn what it felt like to fall. But this wasn't revenge. Not really. Revenge is personal. Revenge is about hurting someone who hurt you. This was revelation. The truth finally stepping into the light after months of hiding in corners and shadows. The truth about who Celeste really was, who Cashin really was, who I really was. And truth, once seen, can never be unseen. If this moment moved you, hit that like button. Comment, quiet justice, if you've ever watched truth win without words. Because what happened next would shake Bellwater to its foundation. By morning, the entire town knew. I woke to my phone buzzing like an angry wasp. Text messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Notifications from social media accounts I barely used. And when I finally opened one link Loretta had sent with 3 exclamation points, my stomach dropped straight through the floor. Bellwater's golden couple implodes. Millionaire cancels anniversary gala hours before event. The article had already gone viral. 6,000 shares, climbing by the second. Someone had leaked it. Probably one of the caterers or florists who'd spent weeks preparing for a party that would never happen. And the press had swarmed like sharks smelling blood in crystal clear water. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. Is this Naomi Ellis? A woman's voice, sharp and hungry. I'm calling from the Bellwater Gazette. Can you confirm you're the maid at the center of the Varelli scandal? I hung up, hands shaking, heart racing. The maid at the center. Like I caused this. Like I'd somehow forced Celeste to be cruel or Cashin to finally see it. Another call. Another reporter. Then another. I turned off my phone and sat on my bed, surrounded by silence that felt heavier than sound. There was a soft knock on my door. Naomi. Loretta's voice. You okay in there? I opened it. She slipped inside quickly, glancing down the hall like reporters might materialize from the wallpaper. Her face was worried, excited, scared all at once. It's everywhere, she whispered. Television, radio, internet. They're saying Cashin called off the gala because of you. That you and him. She trailed off, eyes searching my face. Is it true? Is what true? My voice came out rougher than intended. That he defended me from his wife's abuse? Yes. That there's something romantic between us? No, there's nothing. Just respect. Basic human respect that apparently makes headlines when it crosses class lines. Loretta squeezed my shoulder. The other staff are on your side. We all saw how she treated you. How she treated all of us. Some of them are crying with relief that someone finally stood up to her. But the press will say what they want. She handed me a thermos of coffee. Drink, breathe, and remember, you didn't ask for any of this. You just refused to be broken. That's not a crime. but it felt like one. Felt like I'd become the center of a storm I never wanted to be part of. Like my face, my name, my dignity were being picked apart by strangers who didn't know me but felt entitled to judge. I couldn't stay in my room. The walls pressed too close. So I slipped out through the service entrance, hood up, and walked down to the beach where nobody from the mansion ever went, where the tourists hadn't discovered yet because the path was steep and the sand was rocky. The ocean roared. Wind bit my face, and for the first time in days, I could breathe without feeling like the air was full of glass. I sat on a piece of driftwood and watched waves throw themselves against the shore like they were trying to reshape the world through sheer repetition. Crash, retreat, crash, retreat, over and over until eventually the shore had no choice but to change. Maybe that's what I've been doing. Not fighting, not attacking, just showing up every day with dignity intact until the shore had no choice but to notice. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I turned it back on out of habit. Another message, but this one made me pause. It was from a blocked number. 3 words, stay strong. Truth wins. I stared at those words until they blurred. Someone out there believed me, understood, saw past the headlines to the human underneath. When I returned to the mansion, cameras lined the gate. Vans with satellite dishes. Reporters with microphones pressed against the iron bars like prisoners begging for release. Security kept them out, but barely. The feeding frenzy had begun. Inside, the atmosphere was strange. Electric. Staff moved through halls with purpose, but also uncertainty. What happened now? Would Cashin sell the estate? Would we all lose our jobs? Would Celeste retaliate? I found Cashin in his study. Door half open. He sat at his desk, surrounded by papers. Phone pressed to his ear, looking 10 years older than he had yesterday. I don't care about the optics, he said into the phone, voice tired but firm. Send the statement as written. No apologies. No explanations beyond the facts. And if they want a quote, tell them I have nothing to add. He hung up, rubbed his eyes, noticed me in the doorway. Naomi, he stood. I'm sorry for all of this. The media circus. Your privacy being invaded. This wasn't. Don't apologize for doing the right thing. I stepped inside. You didn't cause this. Your wife's cruelty did. Her slapping me did. Her years of treating people like disposable objects did. I paused. But I need to know something. What happens now? He looked at me for a long moment. Now the lawyers handle the divorce. The publicists handle the press. And I handle figuring out who I am without this marriage defining me. His smile was sad, broken. Turns out I don't know. I've been playing a role so long I forgot it was just a role. You'll figure it out, I said quietly. People like you always do. People like me. He laughed without humor. You mean rich people? Privileged people? People who've never had to struggle. I mean people who have the resources to rebuild, to start over, to choose differently. I met his eyes. I don't have those luxuries. When this blows up, and it will blow up bigger, my face will be plastered everywhere. The help who destroyed a marriage. The maid who seduced the millionaire. The woman who didn't know her place. My voice cracked. You get to be the hero. I get to be the villain. That's how these stories always end. Then we'll change the ending. His voice was steel wrapped in exhaustion. I'm setting up a trust fund. For the staff. Real protections. Real benefits. Healthcare. Retirement. Dignity. He pulled out a folder. And for you specifically, full tuition to any school you want. Housing stipend. Whatever you need to build the life you deserve. I don't want your money, I said automatically. I know. That's why I'm giving it. He slid the folder across the desk. You taught me something, Naomi. You taught me that silence isn't weakness when it protects your soul. That endurance isn't submission when it proves your strength. That sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is refuse to be broken. He swallowed hard. Let me do this. Not as charity, as acknowledgement, as the apology my father never gave yours. My breath caught. You know about that? I had my lawyers look into it. After you told me. His eyes were wet. Your father, Manuel Ellis, worked for us for 28 years. Never missed a day. Never complained. And when his back gave out, my father discarded him like he was nothing. No pensión. No severance. Nothing. He looked down. I can't undo that. but I can do better. Be better. If you'll let me. I took the folder with trembling hands. Opened it. Saw numbers that made my vision swim. Saw legal language that promised security. Freedom. Choice. Why? I whispered. Because you remind me that money doesn't make us matter. Character does. And you have more character in your silence than most people have in their loudest moments. I closed the folder. Closed my eyes. Felt tears finally break through the wall I'd built to survive. Thank you. When I left his study, Celeste was in the hallway, still in her robe, hair undone, makeup smeared like she'd been crying or screaming or both. She looked at me with eyes full of venom and desperation. I hope you're happy, she hissed. You've destroyed everything. No, ma'am. I kept walking. You did that yourself. Behind me, I heard her sob, loud, raw, the sound of someone realizing too late that cruelty has consequences. That power without compassion is just tyranny waiting to collapse. And I felt nothing, not satisfaction, not pity, just the quiet certainty that some bridges need to burn so you can finally stop crossing back to places that hurt you. The media storm raged for 3 more days. My photo appeared in newspapers. Online forums debated whether I was victim or villain. Think pieces argued about class and race and power and everything except what actually mattered. That I'd simply refused to accept abuse as the price of survival. And through it all, I stayed silent. Refused interviews. Declined offers to tell my side. Because my side didn't need telling. It had been visible the whole time to anyone willing to see. Truth doesn't need noise. It just needs time. And I had nothing but time. The legal letter arrived on a Wednesday morning, delivered by courier in an envelope so thick it felt like holding someone's life story. Cashin called me to his study. His face was strange, somewhere between shock and wonder and something I couldn't name. He handed me the envelope without speaking. Inside, documents from his father's estate. Legal papers stamped and notarized and official enough to change everything. And buried in the middle, highlighted in yellow, my name. Naomi Marie Ellis. Beneficiary, silent heir to the Varelli Legacy Trust. I read it 3 times. 4. 5. The words wouldn't arrange themselves into sense. I don't understand, I whispered. Cashin leaned back his chair, looking like a man who'd just discovered his entire foundation was built on sand. Apparently, my father set up a trust 30 years ago for the families of key employees who helped build the company from nothing. Dock workers, warehouse managers, people whose names never appeared in press releases, but whose labor made everything possible. He gestured to the papers. Your grandfather was one of them. And after he died, the trust transferred to your father. And after he died, he trailed off. To me, the room tilted. How much? 200,000. Plus interest. Plus dividends from company stock that's been growing for 3 decades. He met my eyes. Naomi, you're looking at close to $500,000. The number didn't compute. Couldn't compute. $500,000. More money than my father had made in his entire life. More money than I dreamed of having. Enough to change everything. Why didn't anyone tell us? My voice broke. My father died thinking he was worthless to your family. Died broke and broken while this money just sat there. The trust was sealed. My father's instructions were explicit. Beneficiaries wouldn't be notified until they either applied to work for the company or until they turned 40, whichever came first. Cashin's jaw tightened. I think he was ashamed. Wanted to help without admitting he'd done wrong. Wanted to fix things quietly so he didn't have to face the people he'd hurt. Coward, I said. Then, louder, he was a coward. Yes. Cashin didn't argue. He was. And I'm sorry. For him. For the system that let this happen. For everything. I stared at the papers until the words blurred into meaningless shapes. All those years. All that struggling. All those nights, my father stayed up doing math that never worked. Trying to stretch money that wouldn't stretch. Choosing between medication and food while $500,000 sat in some account with his name on it. Did you know? I asked quietly. When you hired me? No, I swear. He leaned forward. I found out last week, right before the gala. My lawyers were reviewing the estate as part of the divorce proceedings, and this trust appeared in the asset list. When I saw your name, he shook his head. I didn't know whether to tell you, whether you'd think I'd been using you, whether it would change everything between us. It doesn't change anything. I set the papers down carefully. I didn't come here for money. I came to prove something my father never got the chance to prove. That kindness still mattered. That dignity couldn't be bought. That we existed beyond what your family decided we were worth. I looked at him. This money doesn't erase the pain. Doesn't undo the years of struggle. Doesn't bring back my father. I know, but it does something else. I felt something shift inside me. Something heavy lifting. It gives me choice. Real choice. The kind I've never had before. I stood. I'm leaving, Cashin. Not because of you. Not because of the press or Celeste or any of it. But because I need to figure out who I am when I'm not fighting to survive. He nodded slowly. Where will you go? I don't know yet, but somewhere I can build something. Help others who've been where I've been. Create space for people who've been told they don't deserve space. I smiled. Your family took from people like mine for generations. Maybe it's time someone gave back. Let me help. He stood too. Not with money. Well, yes, with money, but also with resources. Connections. Whatever you need to build what you're imagining. I studied his face. Saw sincerity there. Saw guilt and hope and genuine desire to be better than his father. Okay, but on my terms. I run it. I make the decisions. And it serves the people I say it serves. Deal. He extended his hand. I shook it. His palm was warm. Familiar now. The hand of someone who'd finally chosen to see rather than look away. That evening, I sat in my room and wrote a letter to my father. Knew he'd never read it. Didn't matter. Some words need speaking even if nobody hears. Dear Dad, you were right. We did matter. The Varela owed us. Not apologies, acknowledgement. And I got it. Not the way you imagined. Not through confrontation or revenge. But through staying. Through refusing to be invisible. Through proving that dignity is louder than cruelty even when it speaks in whispers. I'm leaving this place now. Taking your legacy with me. Building something you would have been proud of. Something that says, we existed. We mattered. We changed the world, even when the world pretended not to notice. Love always, Naomi. I folded the letter and tucked it into my grandmother's quilt. Tomorrow, I'd start the legal process. Accept the trust. Begin planning. But tonight, I let myself feel it. The weight lifting. The future opening. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, pain could become purpose. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. I opened the door to find Cashin holding a small box. Again, always with the boxes. One more thing, he said. Before you go. Before everything changes. He handed it to me. Inside, the silver bracelet. But different now. The engraving had been expanded. For loyalty unseen on one side. Justice needs no noise on the other. When did you? After the gala. After everything exploded. I had them at it. He smiled sadly. Because you taught me that. That justice doesn't need spectacle. Doesn't need revenge. Just needs truth and time and people willing to stand in it. I put it on. The silver caught lamplight and threw tiny stars across my walls. Thank you. For everything. For seeing me when I didn't think anyone would. Thank you for teaching me how to see. He stepped back. Whatever you build, Naomi, it's going to change lives. I know it. After he left, I stood at my window watching the ocean. Dark and vast and full of things I couldn't see but knew were there. Somewhere out in that darkness, my future was taking shape. Unknown, unplanned, but mine. The woman who'd walked into this mansion 3 months ago had been fighting just to survive. Fighting to prove her father's dignity. Fighting to exist without apology. The woman leaving was different. Not because she had money now, but because she'd learned something more valuable. That her worth wasn't determined by how others treated her. It was determined by how she treated herself. And she decided she deserved better than survival. She deserved to thrive. The divorce papers hit the news before they hit the courts. Celeste's lawyers tried every angle, contested the grounds, demanded half of everything, leaked stories about Cashin's inappropriate relationship with staff to any outlet that would listen. None of it stuck, because Cashin's lawyers had done their homework, had dug deep, And what they found buried in offshore accounts and fake charity donations made Celeste's cruelty look like the least of her sins. Tax fraud, embezzlement from her own foundation, falsified records showing donations that never happened, money meant for children's hospitals and cancer research that had somehow ended up funding her shopping trips and spa weekends. The press turned on her like wolves. The same society that had worshipped her beauty and envied her lifestyle now dissected every photo, every quote, every appearance with cruel precision. Comment sections filled with people who'd always suspected, who'd always known, who'd been waiting for permission to say what they'd been thinking. I watched it happen from my new apartment downtown. Small, clean, mine. No marble floors or ocean views, but windows that let in sunlight and neighbors who smiled when we passed in the hallways. Normal. Beautifully, peacefully normal. Loretta called me weekly with updates I didn't ask for, but secretly wanted. The mansion's being sold, she told me one Thursday. Cashin's moving to something smaller. Says he wants to start over somewhere without so many ghosts. And Celeste disappeared. Some say she's staying with her parents in Connecticut. Others say she fled to Europe. Either way, she's done. Finished. Her name's poison now. I should have felt satisfaction. Should have reveled in her downfall the way she'd reveled in my humiliation. But mostly I just felt tired. Sad for the waste of it all. For the life she could have had if she'd chosen kindness over cruelty. Connection over control. How's Cashin? I asked. Loretta paused. Quiet. He asks about you sometimes. How you're doing. If you started your foundation yet. I think he misses you. Not romantically, she added quickly. Just misses having someone around who saw him as human instead of an ATM. I understood that. Loneliness wasn't about being alone. It was about being surrounded by people who only saw what you could give them instead of who you were. The foundation took 6 months to launch. I called it Cornerstone, because that's what people like my father had been. The cornerstones that held up empires while their names got forgotten. The foundation would provide job training, housing assistance, and small business loans to working-class families trying to build something better. Opening day arrived cold and bright. The storefront we'd renovated stood modest, but solid on Bellwater's east side, far from the mansions and country clubs. Inside, computers, desks, a small kitchen, and walls painted the color of hope, warm yellow that caught sunlight and held it. I expected a small crowd, maybe 20 people. 100 showed up, families clutching folders full of dreams. Single mothers with tired eyes and determined jaws. Men my father's age, carrying dignity like armor against a world that kept trying to strip it away. And in the back, wearing jeans and a simple jacket, trying to blend in and failing, Cashin. He caught my eye, smiled, didn't approach, just bore witness. Let his presence say what words couldn't. I see you. I'm proud of you. You did this. The day was chaos in the best way. Applications overflowing. Questions I didn't have answers for yet. Problems I need to solve. But good problems. Human problems. The kind that mattered. When the crowd finally thinned, Cashin approached. You did it. We did it. I gestured around. None of this happens without your family's trust. Without you believing it was possible. I just wrote checks, Naomi. You built this. You turned pain into purpose. He handed me an envelope. One more thing. The deed to the storefront. It's yours. Paid in full. No strings. So you never have to worry about rent or leases or landlords who don't understand the mission. I opened it. Scanned the legal language. Saw my name in bold at the top. Naomi Marie Ellis, sole owner. Cashin, don't argue. Please, let me do this. His voice was quiet, tired. Let me be part of something that matters. That helps. That isn't just about building wealth for people who already have too much. I wanted to refuse. Wanted to prove I could do this alone. But alone was overrated. And pride was expensive. And sometimes accepting help wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. Thank you, I said simply. Thank you for showing me that silence can be strength. That dignity outlasts cruelty. That the people we overlook are often the ones holding everything together. He smiled, sad and genuine. I'm leaving Bellwater next week. New city, new life. trying to figure out who I am without the legacy and the expectations and the weight. Where will you go? Haven't decided yet. Somewhere I can be useful, contribute, matter beyond my bank account. He looked around the foundation with something like hunger. Maybe I'll find my own version of this. Something that proves I'm more than my last name. We stood in comfortable silence. Two people who changed each other without trying. Without romance or drama or anything the tabloids wanted it to be. Just mutual recognition, shared understanding. The quiet knowledge that sometimes the most important relationships are the ones that teach you how to become who you're meant to be. I'll miss you, I said. I'll miss you too. He squeezed my shoulder gently. But this isn't goodbye. It's just separate paths forward. You do your work. I'll do mine. And maybe someday we'll cross again and share what we've built. He left as quietly as he'd arrived. No fanfare, no cameras. Just a man walking away from the person he'd been toward the person he hoped to become. That night, I sat in my small apartment with Cornerstone's first success story framed on my wall. A single mother we'd helped get certified as a medical assistant. She'd sent me a photo of her first day at work, scrubs crisp, smile wider than the ocean. "Thank you for seeing me," she'd written, "for believing I was worth the investment." I traced the frame with my finger and thought about all the people throughout history who'd been invisible, who'd worked and struggled and died without acknowledgement, who'd built the world while others took credit. We saw them now, at Cornerstone, in this small storefront with yellow walls and big dreams. We saw them, believed them, invested in them, and slowly, brick by brick, we were building something my father would have recognized, proof that ordinary people doing extraordinary things deserve extraordinary support. Celeste's name faded from headlines, became a cautionary tale, a reminder that cruelty built on privilege collapses eventually, that you can't treat people like objects without consequences catching up. I never spoke to her again, never needed to. She'd already given me everything she had to offer, a clear example of who I never wanted to become. 5 years later, Bellwater barely remembered the scandal. New dramas had replaced old ones. Different families occupied the gossip columns. Life moved on the way it always does, grinding yesterday's news into tomorrow's forgotten history. But Cornerstone remembered, had grown from one storefront to 3 locations across 2 counties. We'd helped 200 families start businesses, provided housing for 50 single parents, created apprenticeship programs that turned minimum wage into living wage into self-sufficiency. My photo hung in the main office now, but not alone. Beside it, my father, my grandmother, the dock workers and warehouse staff and invisible laborers who'd built empires for other people's names. We honored them, made them visible, proved they mattered. I was in the middle of reviewing grant applications when Loretta called. "Turn on Channel 7. Now." I did. Watch a news segment about philanthropic initiatives. And there, being interviewed in some sleek office in Portland, was Cashin. Older, grayer at the temples. But his eyes had light in them I hadn't seen when he lived in that mansion. "Our organization focuses on workers' rights and fair labor practices," he was saying, "ensuring that the people who build our economy are protected, compensated fairly, and treated with dignity. Because for too long, we've built wealth on the backs of invisible workers and called it success." The interviewer asked about his motivation, about what changed him. Cashin smiled. "I met someone who taught me that privilege is only valuable if you use it to lift others. That silence can be strength. That justice doesn't need noise, it just needs action." He looked directly at the camera. "This work is my apology. Not with words, but with commitment. With showing up every day and trying to be better than the system I inherited." Loretta laughed through the phone. "He's doing it. He's actually doing what you're doing. We're doing what needs doing," I corrected. "Both of us, in different ways. That's how change happens, not through one hero, but through many people deciding to be better." That afternoon, a luxury car pulled up outside Cornerstone. Black, expensive, the kind that made people turn and stare. I watched from the window as the driver opened the back door and Cashin stepped out. He looked good, healthy, like someone who'd finally figured out how to sleep at night. He carried a folder, always folders with him, and walked into the building like he was entering church. Reverent, respectful. Naomi. He smiled when he saw me. It's good to see you. You too. And it was genuinely. What brings you back to Bellwater? This. He handed me the folder. I'm setting up an endowment. $50 million. Half goes to Cornerstone. Half goes to a new initiative I'm launching, workers' advocacy and labor rights. But I wanted to deliver yours personally, to see what you've built. $50 million. I made him repeat it, made sure I heard right. The number was so large it didn't feel real. Cash in, I can't. You can, and you will, because this isn't charity. It's restitution. For your father, for your grandfather, for every worker my family profited from and discarded, for every person who built our wealth and died broke. His voice was firm. Final. Take it. Use it. Expand. Help more people. Be the justice that should have existed all along. I took the folder with shaking hands. Opened it. Saw numbers that would change everything. Allow us to help thousands instead of hundreds. Build housing. Create jobs. Provide education. Transform lives. Why now? I asked. Because I finally understand what you tried to teach me 5 years ago. That having power means nothing if you don't use it to change the systems that created that power in the first place. He looked around Cornerstone with pride. You're doing what I should have done from the beginning, and I want to support it. Not to ease my guilt, though there's plenty of that, but because it's right, because it matters, because you showed me that the most revolutionary thing we can do is treat people like they deserve to exist. We walked through Cornerstone together. I showed him the classrooms where we taught financial literacy, the computer lab where people built resumes and applied for jobs, the child care center that lets single parents attend training without worrying about their kids, the community garden where families grew food and dignity in equal measure. He listened, asked questions, took notes, and when we finished, he turned to me with eyes that held something I'd never seen in him before. Peace. You did this, he said quietly. Took pain and transformed it into purpose. Took injustice and built justice. Took invisibility and created visibility. He smiled. Your father would be proud. Our fathers would be proud. I corrected. Yours for leaving resources that made this possible. Mine for giving me the strength to see it through. He nodded. I'm leaving again tomorrow. Back to Portland. But I wanted to see this first. Wanted to see what's possible when we choose to be better. Will we cross paths again? I asked. I hope so. Different cities, different missions, but same values. Same commitment to justice that doesn't need noise, just action. He extended his hand. Thank you, Naomi, for everything, for teaching me, for showing me, for refusing to let cruelty win. I shook his hand, felt the calluses he'd earned doing work that mattered. Thank you for listening, for changing, for proving that privilege doesn't have to be poison. He left the same way he'd arrived, quietly, without fanfare, like someone who'd learned that real power whispers. That evening, I stood in Cornerstone's main room after everyone had gone home, touched the photo of my father, traced his smile with my finger. We did it, Dad, I whispered. Not the way we planned, not the way you imagined, but we proved it. We mattered. We changed things, and nobody can take that away. The silver bracelet caught lamplight. Both engravings visible, for loyalty unseen. Justice needs no noise. I'd been the maid who didn't belong, the woman who should have been invisible, the person dismissed and doubted and told she'd never matter. But I'd become something else, the founder, the leader, the proof that dignity outlasts privilege, that silence can speak louder than shouting, that justice doesn't need noise, just people willing to stand in truth until truth becomes impossible to ignore. Once dismissed, now divine. Once silenced, now seen. And somewhere out in the world, Cashin Varelli was learning the same lesson, building his own version of justice, proving that people could change if they chose to. Celeste was forgotten, her cruelty erased by time and irrelevance. A cautionary tale about what happens when power mistakes itself for worth. But the people she'd hurt, we were still here. Still building, still proving that the world she tried to keep us out of was never hers to control in the first place. The phone call came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, ripping me from sleep like a hand pulling me underwater. Ms. Ellis. A woman's voice, professional but urgent. This is Mercy General Hospital. Your grandmother has been admitted. You're listed as her emergency contact. I was dressed and out the door in 4 minutes flat. The drive to the hospital blurred into streaks of streetlights and panic. My grandmother had been stable for months in the assisted living facility I'd finally been able to afford. Good care, real doctors, the kind of place where people actually remembered your name. But dementia doesn't care about good care. It takes what it wants when it wants it. She was in room 304, hooked up to machines that beeped like countdown timers. Smaller than I remembered. Frilier. Her eyes were closed, chest rising and falling in shallow rhythms that made my own breathing hurt. Naomi. Her voice cracked open the silence. Eyes fluttering. Recognition flickering like a candle in wind. Baby, is that you? I'm here, Grandma. I took her hand, paper-thin skin over bird bones. I'm right here. Your daddy would be so proud. She squeezed my fingers with surprising strength. So proud of what you built, what you became. Tears burned my eyes. He's why I did it. Him and you. Everything was for you. No, baby. She looked at me with sudden clarity, the kind that comes right before the fog rolls back in. You did it for you, and that's what makes it beautiful. Her breathing rattled. Don't ever forget that you matter. Not because of what you do or who you help or how much you change. You matter because you exist. Because you're here. Because you chose to keep going when stopping would have been easier. The machines beeped faster. A nurse appeared, checking monitors with practiced efficiency. We're doing everything we can, she said softly. But you should stay close. I stayed. Held my grandmother's hand through the long night. Watched dawn creep through hospital blinds like it was afraid to disturb us. And somewhere around 6 a.m., when the world was still deciding whether to wake up or sleep longer, she squeezed my hand one last time. Love you, baby. Always did. Always will. And she was gone. Just like that. One breath, then silence. The machine screamed what my voice couldn't. I'd known this day was coming. Had prepared myself. Made arrangements. Set aside money for a funeral that would honor her the way she deserved. But knowing something doesn't stop it from destroying you when it finally arrives. The funeral happened on a Saturday. Small service at the church she'd attended before dementia stole her ability to remember why she believed. 20 people showed up. Loretta, some folks from Cornerstone, a few neighbors from the old apartment building who remembered her kindness, and Cashin, standing in the back, respectful distance, not intruding but bearing witness, letting me know I wasn't alone even when grief made me feel like the only person left on earth. Afterward, he approached carefully. I'm so sorry, Naomi. Thank you for coming. My voice sounded hollow, foreign, like someone else was speaking through my mouth. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. He handed me an envelope, not another check, just a card with his handwriting inside. Your grandmother raised someone extraordinary. That legacy lives on through you, through everyone you help, through every life you touch. He paused. Take whatever time you need. Grieve. Rest. The work will wait. But the work wouldn't wait. Couldn't. Because grief doesn't exist in a vacuum, and the world keeps spinning even when your heart stops. 3 days after the funeral, I returned to Cornerstone. The staff had kept everything running smoothly, but I could see the concern in their eyes. The questions they didn't ask. Are you okay? Should you be here? Do you need more time? I needed to be useful. Needed to remember why I'd started this. Needed to prove to myself that pain could still transform into purpose even when the pain felt permanent. That morning, a young woman walked through our doors. Maybe 19, 20 at most, carrying a baby on her hip and desperation in her eyes. Her name was Shanice, and her story was one I'd heard too many times. Eviction notice, job that barely paid minimum wage, baby daddy who'd disappeared, family who'd written her off. I don't know where else to go, she whispered, tears sliding down cheeks too young to carry this much weight. Please, I just need help. Just enough to keep a roof over our heads until I can figure things out. I looked at her, saw myself 5 years ago, saw my grandmother, saw my father, saw every person who'd ever been told they didn't matter because their bank account said so. Sit down, I said gently. Tell me everything, and we'll figure this out together. We spent 3 hours mapping her situation, created a budget, found her emergency housing assistance, connected her with job training programs that paid stipends while you learned, enrolled her baby in our childcare program, built a plan that didn't just solve today's crisis, but prevented tomorrow's. When she left, she was crying again, but different tears. Hope tears, relief tears, the kind that wash away shame and replace it with possibility. Thank you, she kept saying. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I watch her walk out those doors holding her baby a little tighter, standing a little straighter. And I felt something shift inside me, something I'd been missing since my grandmother died. Purpose, not just the abstract idea of it, but the living, breathing reality, the proof that my pain had meaning, that my grandmother's life had meaning, that my father's struggle had meaning. We existed, we mattered, and now others would exist and matter because we had. That evening, I sat in my office after everyone had gone home, pulled out the silver bracelet I still wore every day, traced the engravings with my finger. For loyalty unseen, justice needs no noise. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. I almost deleted it. Almost. But something made me open it. Naomi, this is Claire, Celeste's former assistant. I know you have no reason to believe me or trust me after what I did, but I need to tell you something. Something about Celeste that I should have told you years ago. Something that changes everything. Can we meet? My blood went cold. Claire, the woman who'd planted evidence, who'd lied, who'd almost destroyed me to protect herself. What could she possibly have to say now? What truth could be worth hearing after all this time? I stared at that message until the screen went dark, until my office felt smaller, until the weight of the past pressed against the present like thunder rolling in from the ocean. Some doors once closed should stay closed. Some secrets should stay buried. Some truths arrive too late to matter. But what if this one didn't? What if whatever Claire knew could help someone else? Prevent someone else from suffering the way I had? My finger hovered over the reply button, shaking, uncertain, terrified of what opening this door might cost me. If you've ever had to choose between protecting your peace and seeking the truth, stay with me. Comment, I choose truth, if you'd meet with someone who betrayed you. Hit that like button if you believe some secrets are worth the risk of revisiting old wounds. Because what Claire was about to reveal would shake everything I thought I knew about Celeste, about Cashin, about the night that changed my life. And I had to decide, was I strong enough to hear it? The clock was ticking, and my silence was about to be tested in ways I never imagined.